The report also found that the loss of natural great ape ranges in Africa and Asia helps drive the illegal trade as it promotes contact and conflict between apes and humans.
What we've done as human beings is take away everything that elephant or those elephants or these chimpanzees or gorillas need to survive. They're in a full panic mode and they're trying to survive, and you become, that's where human-wildlife conflict comes into play. It's not that the elephant changed. It didn't become any different. It's not a rogue now because something in its chemistry or DNA suddenly changed. It has nowhere to go, and it wants to reclaim some kind of land to live on. It's the same issue we have with chimpanzees and human beings in Uganda. We have it with countless other places where great apes and human beings, the rub is too close now. But I would ask as journalists that you dig a little deeper and not fall back on the easy explanation of it's gone rogue, it's gone crazy. It's a menace, it's a man-eater, it's a man-killer. It doesn't work that way. There's nothing at all in the DNA of a chimpanzee or gorilla that makes them want to fight with a human being. In fact, they would do everything they could to avoid coming into contact with human beings. But we take away their natural habitat and push further and further into their areas of safety, and eventually that conflict is going to come. And when I talked before about the number of great apes that are illegally traded, one of the biggest issues is if you see a chimpanzee, a live chimpanzee, being illegally traded or being sold or smuggled, that chimpanzee probably represents at least 10 that were killed in the forest to get that one. You cannot walk into a forest and pick up a baby chimpanzee. It doesn't happen that way. And chimpanzees live in large social groups and they fight back. They do not want to be threatened. So quite often that simple baby represents 10 dead ones to get a baby into the illegal trade chain. And there are numbers that vary for orangutans and bonobos and gorillas, but it can be that large. So when somebody is counting up ivory tusks, for instance, and you see there's an ivory bust in Kuala Lumpur and there's 100 tusks, all you need to do is divide by 2 and you say, okay, 50 elephants died. And that's sad. When you look at a chimpanzee, you need to say right away, I'm looking at 10 dead chimpanzees for that one.
Great ape habitat is being lost at the rate of 2 to 5% annually. By 2030, less than 10% of the current range will remain on current trends.
Finding that Asia is really a test case for the patterns being played out in Africa regarding palm oil and the growth of oil palm plantations, and all of the same devastation and biological destruction and the loss of biodiversity that is occurring in Asia is hitting us now in Africa as well. We have to learn from these lessons. 80% of Asia's tropical rainforests were wiped out to convert into palm oil plantations, and we're seeing an even faster deforestation rate now in Africa as this boom grows.
The Cross River gorilla, with fewer than 300 individuals estimated to exist in the wild, and just a single identified member in captivity, is the most endangered of the gorilla subspecies, and is listed by the International Union for Conservation of Nature as critically endangered. This is the highest ranking for species that remain in the wild, and means that the population has decreased or will decrease by 80% within 3 generations.
The challenges are major. This cutting of forest, where people just get into the forest reserves, they call it forest reserves, this protected area, as you know. But the movement into those forests and cutting trees and taking them out and as such decreasing or eliminating the chimpanzee populations or the elephant populations that were still living there is huge. There are some conservation is there, but it's very clear it needs support on the governmental level also. And then you can refer to other interests that exist from people with some power who need that forest to create revenue for their private activities. Ongoing local illegal logging, you can say, that rapidly destroys habitat for the remaining population on chimps you're having in Nigeria.
What you've seen here is the worst form of deforestation. Clear felling for agriculture, as you can just see. And oftentimes we've been saying that the greatest destroyer of the forest is actually agriculture, our system of farming. They are clearing this place to plant crops. And just imagine destroying the tropical high forest. just to plant a few trees or like banana and what have you. So this banana and things like cocoa are substantially the greatest destroyer of our forest. So if we can come up with strategies and policies to address that aspect of it, we'll substantially save our rainforest. Definitely it's a great drawback. You know, it shrinks our carbon reserve, the forest that we often put out there, whether it is in the community forest, whether it's in the reserve area and what have you. It shrinks our carbon stock substantially. But we think that we can still address this problem by introducing eco-agriculture, and where people will farm in environment-friendly manner. They don't need to cut down the pristine forest. We have bush, we have other places like secondary forest. We can restrict our farming activities in that area. But we feel there's the need to engage the stakeholders, the communities as far as this is concerned, so that they will adopt new farming practices that are environment-friendly.
This subspecies of gorilla was unknown to science until the early 20th century. Only found in a few forest patches in Nigeria and Cameroon, this western gorilla subspecies is the world's rarest great ape. It is a subspecies of the western gorilla. It differs from other subspecies, the western lowland gorilla, in skull and tooth dimensions, and it is usually found in montane rainforests between 1,500 and 3,500 meters, and in bamboo forests from about 2,500 to 3,000 meters. Many cross-river gorilla groups live in unprotected forests and face the threat of habitat loss through logging and as local people clear land for agriculture and cattle grazing.
One of the main challenges, I guess, is that the populations surrounding these remaining animals are poor. They have few alterations for making livelihoods, so they're hunters, they're farmers, and it's difficult to persuade people like that to give up hunting, to persuade them not to cut down forests because chimpanzees are living there when they need to be providing a livelihood. So that's obviously a main challenge. Another challenge then is we have some excellent protected areas in Cross River State. We have Cross River National Park, but unfortunately it's not well funded, it's not particularly well managed, it's got some problems of hunting and logging. We also have a number of forest reserves in the state managed by the Cross River State Forestry Commission, and again some of these have been lost to agriculture, some have been converted to plantations, and so very few of those are still viable.
As forests are opened up by timber companies, hunters move in. The subspecies also faces the risk of inbreeding and loss of genetic diversity due to the small population size and the low flow of genetic exchange between the different subpopulations. Although areas of unoccupied potential gorilla habitat still remain and can provide connectivity between the subpopulations, these areas are not yet safe for gorillas to use.
The good thing is that I think very few species have actually gone extinct in Cross River State. So we still have animals like the gorilla and chimpanzee and drill and elephant and leopard. They're still here in the state. But if you trek up to, take a vehicle up to Boki, areas in northern Cross River State, like the Afi Mountain Wildlife Sanctuary, yes, there are animals there, but your chances of seeing them are small. You're more likely to perhaps see a squirrel or some birds or butterflies, animals like that. But if you go there thinking you will see gorillas, I think it's quite unlikely.
The continued fragmentation of cross-river gorilla habitat across a large, complex area, together with the threats from hunting and the small number of gorillas remaining, has led to its critically endangered status. The cross-river gorilla is one of the 25 most endangered primates worldwide, that is according to the IUCN.
The main thing to do is to improve levels of protection. It's the only thing. We can't go to another country and buy some animals and come and release them. So the only thing really we can do is manage our existing forests better. That means more rangers, more forest guards, better training, better equipment, vehicles, allowances. but it also means better supervision. So just sending forest guards out to the forest is not enough if we're going to sit in Calabar or Camper or ICOM and not supervise that work. So we've got to make sure that the people we're sending out of the forest are actually working to protect those animals in the forest that we're paying them to do. Many NGOs were involved in helping the state government revise the forestry and wildlife law. It's now a combined forestry and wildlife law, and I believe, we're not yet seeing the actual document, is that the penalties for hunting and illegal fishing, illegal farming were increased. So I think that will help a lot, because the legislation has always been in place. One of the problems was that the penalties were outdated. So, for killing an elephant or something, it might have only been 10 naira. So obviously you need a much more tough penalty for people, but you also need better law enforcement as well. You can have the best legislation in the world, but if you're not going out into the forest and with your rangers and people actually making the arrest, then that will not happen. At the federal level as well, yes, some of that legislation is outdated. There's an endangered species decree, which is now more than 20 years old, and there are penalties within that which are seriously outdated. We know the rates of inflation in the country, so the legislation and the penalties have to keep pace with that. And there has been some moves by the Federal Ministry of Environment to update that decree, and that should be given more emphasis, and it should be passed into law, as Cross River State Government were able to do. I think a lot of people understand the laws. The problem is often lack of alternatives, lack of other options. A lot of the work that WCS has been doing is with education, so working in villages and in schools surrounding some of these key national parks or forest reserves or wildlife sanctuaries, working with children in schools to set up conservation clubs, just to generate some local pride and awareness and responsibility for local wildlife that actually belongs to local people. We also have had a radio program to try and generate awareness and improve levels of understanding. But we've also tried targeting specific hunters in the village. Normally if you go to a village, it's not everybody that's hunting. There's usually one or two guys that are specialised, that are unwilling to give up what they've been doing for years. So we've tried targeting those individual hunters, talking to them and giving them some training.
The Cross River gorilla is a unique subspecies that only lives in a relatively small area. With only a few hundred individuals remaining, it is in very real danger of becoming extinct unless it is properly cared for. That's our program for today. Our inbox earthfile@channelstv.com is always available for your comments or questions. Let's make it a date next week when we'll open Earthfile to examine another issue on the environment. From all of us here, it's bye for now.